the natural way humans make decisions is it starts with, that heart side, as in the emotional side, the survival side, and then all decisions are post-rationalized with analytical thinking. So if a consumer is making a decision that way, you need to communicate the information to them in the way that they're going to consume it.
Hi, I'm Jason Harris, and you're listening to Soul and Science. Fast forward your marketing mind in about 20 minutes. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm joined by Shira Feuer, CMO at Trinny, London. Shira is a dynamic marketer whose previous experience spans across renowned global brands like Walt Disney Company, Burberry, international media agencies, and high-growth venture-backed startups. As CMO of Trinny London, Shira is responsible for worldwide revenue growth, new customer acquisition and long-term retention, community engagement, growth, and really all aspects of Trinny London's global marketing efforts, including brand and performance marketing, advertising, own channel, content, earned media, driving the business's meteoric growth across markets. I got exhausted reading all the things that Shira has to be responsible for. She does a lot. Shira is an expert on how to leverage both a digital audience and deeper brand communities to grow D2C brands. She is steadfast in her belief that an online brand community is most powerful when it isn't led by employees working to drive sales. And she understands the importance of creating a virtual brand personality as consumers continue to opt for e-commerce in a post-pandemic world. Today's episode theme is how authenticity can lead to growth. Welcome to the Soul and Science podcast, Shira. We're going to dive right in. Before we talk about Trinny, we're going to talk about Shira. So tell me the Shira origin story. Were you born into marketing?
I'm from Canada. I grew up in Winnipeg, which is in the middle. But I was at McGill University in Montreal, and I was going to study economics and finance, but then I took marketing 1 and I fell in love with it. And so I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then I, of course, at the end of my degree, sold out for the cash and became a banker instead, which was horrendous. And I would not wish it upon any of my worst enemies. But I learned my lesson very young. So that's the thing, is sometimes it's good to have those experiences when you're young, because you would always wonder.
Like the first week you were in that environment, you're like, oh boy. Or did it take like a year before you realized it wasn't for you?
I realized the day of my job interviews. So
good answer.
I physically set foot on the trading floor. It was so they flew us to Toronto. We had a bunch of interviews and lunch and a tour of the trading floor. And I physically stepped into this room and was like, I don't want to be here. And I was going to be going to California interview with Google. And so I really I knew it was wrong for me. I just thought, how bad could it be? And so this was the absolute clear beginning of the credit crunch. And I was there for the height of it. So I was there in a very sort of extreme time in banking history, which I guess is kind of interesting, but was really unpleasant. This is also pre-Me Too. So the way they treated 22-year-old women was not especially nice. I hope it's a lot better than it was back then. I don't know if I believe that it is, but yeah, it was pretty awful. So I knew from the beginning, I thought I would just stick it out. So I did it for a couple of years, and it brought me to London, which was my goal, but it was not great. But it was good because it reminded me of what I actually wanted to do. So that's how I got in marketing in the first place.
What was the first job you got after that?
Well, my first job was an unpaid internship at an agency. I can't even remember the name of the agency because I did it for 2 weeks. But I was very unemployed at the height of the credit crunch. I was being told by people that, if it had been a few years earlier, I would have had no problem getting a job. But I was up against people with years of experience in marketing, right? So had this 2-week internship, then worked for an agency. I did finally get a job, super entry level, at another agency, which now no longer exists either, but worked in a few agencies over the years, finally got into more established, genuine agencies, but did lots of stuff, learned about digital. So it was really good. It was an education. That's how I viewed it. And I really liked working agency side, actually. It was really fun. And it gave me that breadth of understanding of different industries and different clients. Before I was then approached by a brand, which I didn't think I was going to do yet, but that brand was Burberry. And and it was the right move for me at the time. And I knew I was going to learn a ton there.
What a great brand to work for.
Yeah. And I was there in sort of the best possible time. It was the golden era that I was there. And we got to do a lot of very innovative things in digital. So I was really, really fortunate to be there. And I learned everything I know about brand, I learned at Burberry. So it was really great.
And did you go from there to Walt Disney?
Yeah, I did. So I was at Burberry for a few years when I was approached by the Walt Disney Company. And if you had asked me as a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have said an animator for Disney. So I never remotely thought that was once I was older, that was a place I could work. And so I was approached about this role there that in EMEA would be working with all the different parts of the business. So, the studio, TV, consumer products, parks, ESPN, ABC, all of it. In the US, it's much more siloed, but over here, I got to work with everyone, and I got to work across all the franchises like Star Wars, Marvel, Mickey Mouse. So it was a very, very cool job. And I was really fortunate to come in. I came in via social media and then got to work in digital marketing solutions more broadly. So that was an incredible experience. And if you want to learn how a business should be run, you should look at the Walt Disney Company, because it is a PhD education in understanding business.
Really incredible. Great places to work. And then tell me how you got to Trinny London.
Disney started working with Techstars, which is a startup accelerator in LA. So running these programs for startups. And I had wanted to be a part of it on the Disney side. And they said, no, you're in London. So I just said, can I go to Techstars here separately? And I approached them and said, can I work with you? And so I started doing startup mentoring that way. And I was very envious of how fast startups could move, because Disney is, I think, in many ways still the best brand in the world, but it is very slow moving because it's gigantic. So being able to see how quickly these startups could move was something that was very, very appealing to me. So, I decided after a few years at Disney to make the move. And so I worked in a few startups in sort of the kid space, taking that knowledge from Disney. But I've worked in so many different industries. Even within Disney alone, you're working with lots of different industries, right? So after I was doing a bit of consulting, worked in travel. So I've done lots of stuff, and I was approached about this role in beauty, and I really had done very little in beauty. So my only exposure to the beauty industry really was as a part of what we did at Burberry, which was very heavily focused on the fashion side, but we had Burberry Beauty as well. So I'd done a little bit, but it was definitely not my experience. So I've always just been really open to any industry that I find interesting. And when I was approached about this role, I questioned it because I thought it's another celebrity brand. And I wasn't super keen on the idea of what might be a brand that has a nice name to it, but not good quality products. So I was very skeptical. And then I tried the products because I was like, all right, well, I might as well just give it a try. And I liked them so much that I bought them. And it was only after that I went and met with Trinny and really started to understand that she had a really strong vision of what she wanted to build. The rest is history. So that was about 3.5 years ago now. And the company's grown quite a bit in that time. When I joined, there were 30 of us in the business all sitting together on one floor of the office building that we're in. Now my team is over 50. The company's over around 200, I think, something like that. We're now 3 floors in that same building. So lots of changes over the last few years, but it's kind of like the startup dream of how you want this to go. And it doesn't always go this way with startups. So I do feel really fortunate.
Can you give us the Trinny London story, the brand story, like what it represents, how it's different, where it fits into the space?
Yeah. So a lot of people know Trinny from her background in fashion, and working in fashion for so many years. She worked with people all over the world, many, many thousands of women, talked to them about different parts of their lifestyles. And this very much included makeup. So she started the brand as a makeup brand. And she wanted to have high quality cream-based products that were multitasking, so that when she's traveling all over the world, she had something that was easy. And she developed the makeup stack. So you don't need a big messy makeup bag, but you have this very streamlined, efficient way of using really top end products. So that's how the company began, was understanding what women wanted and developing products to meet those needs. So she also developed something called Match to Me, which looks at a customer's skin, hair, and eye combination and suggests products based not just on one of those things, which is often how this is done. Usually they'll say, okay, this is your eye color. Here's our suggestion, but actually acknowledging that it's that combination that makes the difference. And then over this last year, we've launched skincare. So we've expanded from just makeup into beauty more broadly. And our skincare launch has been really significant because our skincare products are highly active, highly powerful skincare products, but it's a space that can be very confusing. So Trinny has had a goal across the board of making really good products really easy for people to understand and to get the best option for them to feel their best. And that's been the goal. So we think it's really important, in order for people to feel their best, to have products that work for them and who they are, and not what sort of the industry tells them that they need, but actually what's suited to them personally.
So it's really customized, and you can do that. It's all D2C, right?
Yeah, so it is D2C. We sell in a few retail locations, but it's all our own people. But we are still very heavily digital. And that personalization element is important because it can be hard if you don't have the whole environment to be able to really give the best possible recommendation. So it's something that we're looking at longer term, of how can we go more broadly and look at opportunities where maybe it's not as personalized, and what does that look like and what does that mean, and how do you create the experience that is the full experience we want to give. So it's something we think about a lot, because right now it's very pure. Like you go on our site and you have the full experience, or you talk to any of our people in person who are phenomenal at making those recommendations. And that's a big part of our core DNA.
You're responsible not just for marketing, but also for revenue growth. So in a way, you're kind of a chief growth officer and a CMO, kind of all in one. How do you think about using those two, kind of the sales and marketing sides of your brain, when you think about marketing the brand?
I mean, it's a really good question. I mentioned that I started in marketing in the credit crunch, right? So it's interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, obviously with the recession, cost of living crisis, and how I learned to be a marketer was at a time when things were lean. And that really shaped my approach. So the idea of focusing on marketing, but also the revenue growth, like, to me, those are two halves of the same thing. Like, I would never think of marketing in isolation without it. So we're always thinking about how can we build a premium brand while at the same time growing our customer base and retaining our customers. So it's sort of just, it meshes together. But I think having products that people love at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. That's the thing that brought me into the company in the first place, was I needed to believe that what we were selling was good and was worth the money. And so what we have is good and it is worth the money, and people do tell their friends. So at the end of the day, that's more important than anything we can do in marketing. But having that as a foundation means that we have a lot to play with.
In a lot of organizations that are bigger, you might be more in control of like the image and the brand, and not so worried. You have like a sales team and that reports to someone that's responsible for the numbers. Do you think about that connected? Do you think about it separately? Like, this content is building our brand and telling our story. This content is selling this one product. How do you kind of think about that with the people that you manage? And do you have like teams divided that do different parts of that?
I think that understanding our brand DNA, our purpose, our values, our mission, that needs to apply to everyone in the team. And so while the execution might look a little bit different depending on the channel, they need to fit together. And we know that somebody who sees an ad on Instagram might then see some press in a magazine, then might see have exposure to an event that we do, or then come across Trinny via YouTube. And it needs to all fit in the same world, even though they don't have to be twins, they need to be siblings, right? So when we think about our purpose is very much around empowering people. And whether that's with our products or our content, we want that to exist. our vision is to encourage people to evolve by inspiring and entertaining them in a language that resonates with how they're feeling. So that entertainment aspect that I mentioned is really important there, because that's a big point of difference for us. And in an industry that can be too scientific sometimes, or it can be too youth obsessed sometimes, there's a lot of flaws, ironically, with the beauty industry. And we don't look at everybody else directly. We look at the reason why we do what we do. And our mission ultimately is to offer effortless, personalized beauty for people of all ages. And it all comes together. So, for example, we have a content stream called the Elevator Pitch, where Trinny meets with female founders, and in 30 seconds they pitch their business. And we know that we have a lot of these women tell us how they have, the most traffic or the most sales they've ever seen as a result of getting this exposure. So that's something about helping people be their best. It's not necessarily saying go buy this product, but it all fits within that same umbrella. And we do feel quite passionately that if you have the voice to make content that isn't just selling all the time, you will engage the audience in a much deeper, more meaningful way. So that's what we're trying to do. We probably don't get it right 100% of the time, but we try.
And do you have any social good element to the brand, or anything that you support that relates to this vision?
Yeah, we have a few. The one that is closest to my heart that I would want to talk about, we have something called the Trinny Tribe, and it's these Facebook groups of women around the world who love what Trinny stands for. They love the brand, and they are. I mean, it's mostly women. It's people, but it is heavily women in there. And they, we say it's like the nicest place on the internet. They're so supportive of each other. And there is a Trinny triber called Sharon who is a really beautiful, eloquent writer. And Sharon has cancer, and she wrote us a letter just saying how much the tribe had meant to her as she was going through her treatment. And it sort of went viral within the company because it was so moving. And someone who was in the team at the time, she was an intern. She'd been with us, I think, 3 days or something like that. And she said, petition to name a product after Sharon. And we were like, genius. Absolutely. Yes. And so we did. And so we worked with Sharon. We wanted to know how we could tell her story and who we could work with that she wanted us to work with. So she chose the organization Breast Cancer Now, who had provided some really amazing resources for her personally. And we launched this product called Sharon. And so a portion of the proceeds of Sharon continuously goes to Breast Cancer Now, but we work with them on a broader basis as well. So something that I learned at Disney was the importance of being able to commit to organizations, not to say you should only ever work with only one. And there are other organizations that we have worked with and do work with. But I think if you can develop those long-term relationships and make it really meaningful, I think it just in terms of even just the employees, it means a lot. Like a few of us went to a Breast Cancer Now event recently, and it was just amazing for us to be there to support them because we feel a closeness to them through Sharon. It's really nice. So we love working with them, and it's the origins of how we started working with them because of Sharon being the one to make it happen, I think was amazing. So hopefully we'll work with them for a long time to come.
Switching gears away from purpose, one thing that, we see a lot in the space is this notion of sustainability. That seems important. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I think going forward, sustainability isn't going to be like hook for anyone because it's just table stakes, right? I don't think we're 100% of the way there yet. I think, we've developed a skincare range that's refillable on purpose because we want people to have premium skincare, but to be able to buy refills instead of having to buy, recyclable plastic, for example. I'm not going to say we don't use plastic in our products. We do. And we're constantly looking for innovations to continuously get better and to continuously improve our packaging, ingredients, everything that we do. But it's very, very front of mind for us. So in any areas where we're not 100% there yet, we are working to change that. So I don't think customers will accept anything less in the future. Again, not because I think everyone is so green themselves, but because it's just going to be the norm. And it's like, if you're
Yeah.
not that, I think you'll just be kind of antiquated. So it's something that is super front of mind, and we're working on it every day.
It's also interesting to think about if customers are pushing brands into that space or if brands are leading customers into that space.
What we're seeing now, there is still a ton of very, very popular fast fashion, for example. If you look at it as an industry, when there aren't those alternatives, people often are still buying the bad stuff that ends up in a
Right.
landfill, right?
Sure.
So I think as a society, we have a long way to go. I think there is a real responsibility from brands and from governments in terms of regulations, but it does go both ways. You're right.
Do you think customers will pay more for products that are better for the environment, or
The honest answer is no, I don't. And
no?
that's
Okay.
going to be very controversial, but I just look at, like I said, fast fashion as an option. I mean, people wouldn't be buying some of the stuff that's out there and very, very successful if the answer to that question was yes. And I think maybe eventually, and maybe it's a generational thing, but even then, no, I still don't think that. I think that the responsibility of everybody to get up to speed to be doing the right thing. But I do think that for a lot of consumers, cost and convenience are number one.
The current macroeconomic climate of inflation, weaker euro, does that affect how you guys think about pricing? Or do you sort of keep it the same and try to get through the next 6 or 9 months as we head into, I'm sure, a recession?
Well, we want to make sure our products have the best possible value for our customers. And Trinny had not touched the prices between when she launched the brand until very recently. We did increase a few of our prices recently because of the domino effect of the supply chain. So it wasn't something we did lightly, and it also wasn't a huge. We're talking about 1 or 2 pounds here or there. So it wasn't massive, but in our industry, everybody else had to increase their prices more than once. We had to do a little bit, and it was something that there was a lot of conversation about, because what we want is for customers to be able to get the best quality products at the best possible price for what those products are, because there's a ton of products in the industry that are priced very low, but you're kind of buying water. Like, I think as consumers, it's hard for us sometimes there's so much information. It's like, how do you distill what thing is worth it and what isn't? And that's my job as a marketer, is trying to make it easy for people to understand that, which isn't always easy because there's just so many products to try and get through. So I think there's never been a harder time for consumers to discern what's worth it and what isn't. And so it's tricky.
The Sharon product that was from an employee that was there for 3 days was obviously like a gut decision. You thought it would work. It just felt right for the brand. And then other decisions, I'm sure, like pricing, had a lot of research and data behind it. As a marketer, do you live more in the heart or the head? Are you more data focused or more gut instincts in the way that you make decisions?
So I think about this in terms of the different parts of the brain. So what you're calling the heart is what I would think of as the reptilian brain and the limbic system in the brain where emotion lives. And then I think of the neocortex as the more analytical side. And really it is an obvious combination, but also you got to think about the order, because the natural way humans make decisions is it starts with, that heart side, as in the emotional side, the survival side. And then all decisions are post-rationalized with analytical thinking. So you can't do one or the other. You have to look at, if a consumer is making a decision that way, you need to communicate the information to them in the way that they're going to consume it. So you have to think about, what is that gut reaction at first, and then how do they say, okay, well, it's worth it. So if our price is a pound more, is it worth it to them because the benefits to them of on an emotive level are clear? Then they'll say, yeah, okay, fine, I'm willing to pay that extra pound. But you can't do it without both. And some will be weighted up or down depending on the channel or the product or what you're trying to say, but they both always have to be there.
what is like something that you can pass on to the audience that you have learned in your role as CMO at Trinny London?
So something that I knew or I thought I knew that's been very verified by my time at Trinity London is the importance of taking inspiration from everywhere. So my CV is a little all over the place in terms of industries. And for a while, people kind of sometimes use that against me of like, pick a path, right? Pick an industry. And so often beauty looks at beauty or startups look at other growth startups. So you get a lot of sameness. And when it all gets a bit samey, you don't get any cut through. And so you need to look to other industries to say, what can I learn from the insurance industry that I can apply to beauty, or from the car industry, or from this TV show or that podcast or whatever, not just looking at brands, but looking at individuals or looking at governments or looking at whoever. That's what makes something new. And that's where creativity comes from. So I knew that, but I think I've been able to see it come to life in a way that I hadn't before at Trinity London. And it's been really great. And I think it will hold up in the future.
I think that's great stuff. I'm going to now turn to some questions about you in our final few questions here. What are some role models that you've had either in business or your life that have made an impact on you?
Such a good question. I would say somebody like Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a real hero of mine. Gloria Steinem, who I actually got to meet this year, which was unbelievable.
Oh, amazing.
I think that when I think about role models, they tend to be kind of rebellious people who did what they had to do to make a difference. And so, women like that, very inspiring to me.
I love that. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you always go back to?
Yeah, there's one that I do go back to a lot from Albert Einstein, and it's something along the lines of everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And so I often talk about how we don't want to be looking at fish climbing trees, and we need to see value where it is, and leverage people for their talents and their strengths. So yeah, I go back to that one all the time.
That's awesome. I've never heard that before. Where do you feel you do your best work? Where do you feel the most creative and productive?
I think creative and productive are two different things for me. So creative would be anywhere that's a new environment. So just getting inspiration from anywhere that is not the same old places. So that's not in the office and that's not at home. It's just new places, wherever that may be. And that's always, I send myself emails as reminders. It's like my to-do list. And so I always am sending myself emails from random places around the world. But yeah, for sure, that's important for creativity for me. And productivity, I would say at home, working from home for me is really, really powerful in terms of getting things done. And through the pandemic, my team's productivity honestly doubled when they were working from home. So that's why I'm such a big advocate for hybrid working, because I think that having that element is so important for productivity.
Right. That's great. So kind of you can be most productive in your own environment and you can be most creative in an environment you haven't been in before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have an outstanding life goal, either personally or professionally, that you kind of have on your bucket list?
Well, I have lots of things on my bucket list, but a big one, I guess, would be I want to visit 100 countries before I turn 50. So working on that at the moment.
What number are you at?
So by the end of this year, I'll be at 66. So I got a few years to go. So I think I'll be all right, but slowly getting there.
I love that. This is like a left hook, but what's a word, if you close your eyes, that you think sums up who you are and maybe the way you work?
The word that immediately came to mind, it's funny because Trinny hates this word so much, but for me personally, it is the word that came to mind, which is authenticity, and just being able to be authentic in what I do in my life and in my work. Trinny hates it because she thinks it's a cheesy word, but I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. Well, thanks for being with us. Where can people go to learn more about Trinny London and about you?
TrinnyLondon.com and your social network of choice. We are there. And yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. So come say hi.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks for the time. This has been great, and we can't wait to see what this brand and what you do next.
Thank you.
Soul and Science is a Mekanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, Tyler Nielsen, Emma Swanson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.